I want to show you how to create these really simple, easy to make monster paper miniatures. It can't be that easy. It really is. So one of my absolute favorite projects I've ever made on this channel are these little 1x1 inch paper miniatures of all these heroes. I'm really proud of how these turned out, and I thought it would be super fun to make some monsters to add to my collection and take you along on the process of how to create these really simple but really awesome and fun and bright looking paper miniatures. Okay, so what you'll need is some paper, probably some cardstock or Bristol board. It can't be just regular thin paper. It has to be thick paper or your miniatures won't stand up. You're also gonna need a pencil and an eraser, a ruler, something to draw and color with. I'm gonna be using Posca markers, but colored pencils, even crayons, could work. You'll need some scissors or a hobby knife. I'm going to be using a hobby knife so I can score the paper to make folding the miniatures a little easier. And you're also going to need some glue stick, or I'll be using rubber cement. If you want to get your hands on some of these supplies that you might not have laying around, I'll have links down in the description to everything I'm using in this video. Okay, first things first, we're gonna make a template, something that's easy to cut out from the paper and fold down into the actual paper miniature. Now this is a really simple template that you're gonna basically fold it down into a little triangle and stick the two ends together, and then the miniature will stand up from there. The template is basically two squares put together with another square that's cut in half and like separated on the ends. I've used a ruler to trace out the templates on this piece of Bristol board. I've made a couple that are the 1 inch squares, and then a couple that are the 1.5 inch by 1 inch, which I guess is more of a standard humanoid paper miniature size. Got a couple of those, and then I made a 2 inch by 2 inch, and I went with a 1 inch base on this one. And then I even ruled out a big 3 inch square with a 1.5 inch base. And I think the best thing to do is just to fill up an entire sheet of paper with as many of these as you can, rule them all out at once, cut them all out at once, and then you have tons of templates ready to go for whenever you want to draw up a new miniature. Okay, I'm going to be using a hobby knife to cut out these templates. Scissors work just fine. You're going to cut out sort of the outside edge of the template. Don't cut the middle 3 horizontal lines on these things. If you're using a hobby knife like me on the thicker Bristol board paper, or even cardstock, don't try and cut through all at once. Make multiple cuts. You'll be able to control the hobby knife much better, and it just makes the whole process easier if you just know going in you're gonna do multiple cuts. I'm going freehand, but if you want super straight measured lines, definitely use a ruler. Just be real careful of your fingers. The other thing that's nice about the hobby knife is that you can score the horizontal lines of the template just with the lightest pressure, like not even as hard as you would push down when you're writing with a pen, just barely scrape the knife across the horizontal lines. And this is gonna make it way easier to fold the miniatures later on. Don't fold them yet. Score them now, but wait to fold until later. And this scoring process just makes the folding so much easier. Here's an example of folding this thicker Bristol board paper without scoring. It's not a clean fold, it's all bumpy and weird, and it's hard to fold an even straight line. And here's an example with the scoring. You basically just bend the paper and it automatically folds itself into this nice, perfect, crisp, straight line. But again, don't fold your miniatures yet. Keep them straight, because now we're moving on to the fun part. We're gonna draw our monsters. Okay, I'm starting on the 1x1 inch miniature, and I'm just gonna draw the simplest little slime, just an oval with some eyes and a mouth. You can see that even on a drawing that is this simple, I still will erase and figure things out and get things just right. This penciling stage is where you can make mistakes and change things really easily. Another thing you gotta remember is that the bottom of the monster needs to be towards the smaller base area of the template. So if you have the template vertically and there's 4 sections on the template, I like to draw them in the 3rd section kind of, facing upright with their feet down towards the bottom, you can see where I'm drawing the monsters. Now, I've just drawn the front view of the monster. If you want to be really awesome and draw the back view, you can draw that on the upper part of the template. Just remember that the middle of the 3 horizontal lines is where the template folds down. So the monster's head, the top part goes towards that middle line, and their feet, the bottom part, goes towards the base on either side. I've moved on to an ogre that I'm blocking in with just circles for the head, the body, the feet, and the hands, and then I'm sort of connecting them all together and slowly adding details. You know, the nice thing about the smaller hero size miniature is that it really forces you into like leaving out a lot of detail. You got to simplify, and it just makes drawing easier. So once you get up into the 2 and 3 inch miniature sizes, you're going to be adding more details, and the drawings might take a little bit longer. But in the scheme of things, it's still a pretty small drawing, so you don't have to get caught up adding too many crazy details. As you can see here, my ogre is looking like a big angry Muppet, and I think that's hilarious and awesome. I'm not trying to make this fully realistic, ultra painted, crazy fantasy art thing. Like, give me the bright, colorful, simple, weird looking Muppet ogre instead. Now, if you still feel like you need some help drawing monsters, I just added 2 new zines to my shop. This one's called Flick Silverpen's Guide to Drawing Monsters. It'll take you through step by step a really simple process. It gives examples of elements you can add to your monster, so you can learn to draw monsters with 0 experience. I've also added Mad Morven's Guide to Making Monsters, so if you're looking for a fun way of creating your own unique monsters that then you can draw onto your paper miniatures, definitely check out this Making Monsters zine. It's full of random tables that'll help you create like really unique, fun to use at the game table monsters. I'm really proud of both of these guidebooks. I think they're super helpful resources. I have a link down in the description to where you can get them in my online shop if you want the physical zines. If you want the digital versions, you can sign up for my Patreon, which is also linked down there. Check them out if you want some help drawing and making some monsters. Okay, now I've got 4 monsters penciled out: my slime, my Mad Morven hobgoblin dude, my ogre, and my dragon. And now it's time to add some color. So I'm going to be using Posca markers. These are like paint pens that put down a pretty solid fill of paint color, pigment. And the way I like to work with these things is by filling in the color areas first, and then I'll add the black line art on top afterwards. So you might have noticed that I've sort of lightened up my pencils with an eraser. Sometimes if your pencil lines are too dark, they'll show through, especially the lighter colors. But I think this part of the process is super fun, just adding solid color. You can be a little messy because you know you're gonna go back over with the black line art and separate all of the colors. And if you make a mistake, it's easy enough to let the paint markers dry and then go back over with a different color, because the paint markers can actually go over top of each other pretty easily. Light colors over dark colors, maybe a little bit trickier, might have to do a couple coats, but pretty forgiving for the most part. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to inking, and I'm gonna be using the Posca PC1MR. I love this little marker. It puts down the perfect solid black line, uniform line. I just think it's perfect for outlines. It can be a little thick, especially on these smaller miniatures. This is another reason that adding too many details might be tricky on the smaller miniatures. But really, this is my favorite part of the process. This is when the monster, comes alive, and you really get to see the illustration materialize before you, become real. Now, one thing I forgot on this Mad Morven, I was gonna fill in his hair black, but because the background is going to be filled in, I've decided to change the color, so I'm adding in the blue hair on top and re-outline it with the 1MR line art Posca. And like I said, with these Posca pens, if you make a mistake, it is fairly easy to go back in there and fix things up. My favorite are the small miniatures, but I really do like drawing these bigger 2 and 3 inch miniatures as well. It's a little intimidating, so I like to take my time, but I'm not too worried because I know I can fix things. And if all else fails, You can just cut out a new template and start over, because even the 3-inch miniature, which feels huge in comparison to a 1-inch miniature, still is just a 3 by 3-inch drawing. You know, it's not like you're spending the time on some huge poster illustration that's gonna take forever. It really is easy just to start over and try again if you're not happy with how it turns out. Okay, got my line art done on these monsters. Now it's time to fill in the background. I'm just gonna fill it in black. I have 3 different sizes of bigger Posca markers, a 3, a 5, and a 7M. And literally all I'm doing is filling in the entire template, everything around the monster, just solid black. And this might seem like an extra unnecessary step, but I'm telling you, it looks awesome, and it's amazing how it hides some of the imperfections in the drawing and coloring. So I'm just using the smaller 3 and 5M to get in around the actual illustration of the monster, and then using the big 7M to really quickly fill in the back and base parts of the template. Now, once you have the front of all these miniatures all filled in black, everything's dry, then you flip them over and you fill in the backside as well. And I know this does seem like extra work, especially when you think about folding the miniature down. Like, does it really matter if the inside is black or just left white? But I'm telling you, it's gonna make it look awesome and really elevate this thing beyond just a paper miniature. Now that all the monsters are illustrated, filled in black, it's time to fold them down. If you scored along the 3 horizontal lines of the template, it's really easy just to make the 3 folds. And now you can really see how the miniature fits together. The 2 top and bottom base parts are gonna fold over each other and be stuck together with some glue. I'm gonna be using some rubber cement. This stuff is messy and smelly, but it's made for sticking paper together. So once these miniatures are stuck together, they're gonna stay stuck together. So where the 2 bases are sticking together, each side gets a layer of rubber cement. Now, the trick with this stuff, it's kind of counterintuitive to how like all other glue works, but with rubber cement, you put it on both sides of the paper, you let it dry, so it'll go on and it'll be kind of glossy and shiny, and then you let it dry, it'll dull. It'll still be a little tacky to the touch, but it won't be wet. So you let it dry, and then you stick both pieces of paper together, and once they are stuck together, they're not coming apart. So when you're folding the miniature down, be careful sticking them together. You know, make sure everything's lined up and then stick it together. Okay, now we're on to the final step. You can see how the edge of the miniature is still white. You know, the sides of the template and then where you scored and folded the miniature down still has this line of white. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your marker and just run it into those folds and make it solid black. You know, be careful not to slip and draw over your artwork, but this is really gonna take your miniatures from looking like just a folded piece of paper and turning them into this high quality, custom made piece of art that you can slam down on your game table. And I promise, when you throw down these hand-drawn miniatures, even if it's just paper miniatures, the other players at the table are gonna flip out. Let me know what you think of these little monsters down in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my Patreon or my online shop. I've got a bunch of how-to guidebooks, like I mentioned earlier, and one-shot adventures, entire tabletop games, tons and tons of stuff on there. Definitely check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!